Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video that I thought was particularly interesting. And the reason why I wanted to review this video and have this conversation is because when it comes to this channel, and of course, when it comes to, well, really any sports channel or any channel that you look at, pretty much anyway, they're all going to try to push a certain narrative. They all have a certain agenda. My agenda, personally, overall, like I said, is to be as objective and logical as possible and to break things down the best way that I can. And of course, when it comes to a certain amount of these channels that I end up reviewing, whether it be Dante's Boxing Nation, Aki TV, or Boxing Ego especially, what they always try to allege in some sort of way is usually that Canelo Alvarez, that he is maneuvering in a certain way. And the reason why they try to tear down Canelo Alvarez so much is it because, in my opinion, that they 100% truly believe that Canelo just avoids and ducks everyone? No, not necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong. Do they maybe believe that he's maneuvering around some people? I think that maybe there is some of that belief there. But do I think all in all that they believe that it is as bad? Or do I think that they believe all the bullshit that comes out of their mouths? No, I don't. The reason why they mainly try to tear down Canelo Alvarez, like I said, or a Vasily Lomachenko, or an Alexander Usyk, or the reason why they tore down Tyson Fury ever since he whooped Deontay Wilder's ass when it comes down to it. The reason why they mainly tear down these fighters, like I said, they basically are the pro-black fighters league. Basically, when it comes down to it, just like ESPN, when it comes down to it, their name is ESPN. They can protect certain Latino and Caucasian fighters. Well, what Boxing Ego, Dante's Boxing Nation, and Aki TV are, they're basically the PB, FL, the Pro Black Fighters League. That's basically what they are. That's what I should start calling them. The PBFL, the Pro Black Fighters League, because that's basically what these channels are about. You got ESPN and you got the PBFL. That's pretty much what it is. So it is what it is. But anyways, Mr. Boxing Ego, he's going to be talking about the possibility of Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis facing Mr. Rolly Romero. At least I believe that is how you pronounce his name. It could be Rolly Romero. I'm not necessarily sure. But Mr. Romero, of course, he was actually scheduled to face Gervonta Tank Davis in his last fight. Of course, he ended up having to pull out of it, and the fight ended up getting canceled because Mr. Romero, I believe that he was accused of sexual assault. Of course, recently, apparently he has been proved innocent because apparently the allegations did not stand, which of course is very good for him. Like I said, I don't wish bad against anyone. But I'm hearing news overall through the grapevine that Gervonta Tank Davis, that he may face someone like a Rolly Romero next. Now, the thing is about these channels when it comes down to it, like I said, and there's a big reason why I like to review these channels, to get certain narratives and nip them right in the ass. Because a certain amount of these channels, if you're new to boxing and if you just come in there, they'll say, oh, well, fighters like Canelo Alvarez and, all these other guys, they're maneuvering and basically they're facing the weakest opposition. You cannot be facing repeatedly the weakest opposition, or at least, just the weakest contenders out there when these guys are legitimate champions. Now, if you want to maybe allege that, in your opinion, you believe David Benavidez or Jamal Charlo or Demetrius Andrade are personally more talented than those guys, you could if you wanted to. But don't go around, saying all in all that Canelo just fights nobodies and he fights everyone off their worst performances. All this are bullshit. And Mr. Ego, even though I like his channel more than that of a Dante's Boxing Nation or Aki TV, he does get on that bullshit. It is what it is. Is that me saying maybe that Canelo does not do some maneuvering here and there? No. But you're going to notice in this video that Mr. Boxing Ego, and I've said this when it comes to the new media movement or the PBFL. That's what I should start calling him from now on, the PBFL. But when it comes down to it, like I said, basically Boxing Ego, Aki TV, and I showed this in a video a couple days ago, one of the main assets that they have within overall, their little league when it comes down to it is Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. Because Gervonta Tank Davis, if we really want to go there when it comes down to it, if we actually want to talk about a fighter, because the narratives they always try to say about certain fighters that they don't like is that, oh, they're slithering in and out of the weight divisions and they fight people off their worst performances and, all in all, they're not facing elite competition. We've even heard Dante's Boxing Nation and Aki TV go as far to say that Gervonta Tank Davis has fought better competition, all in all, as of lately than what Canelo Alvarez has. Which, of course, is, a spoonful of bullshit, but we're going to get into that overall in this video. But at the end of the day, like I said, there's a difference between Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez and someone who actually is slithering in and out of the weight divisions, usually facing the weakest contenders or contenders all in all that look very, very vulnerable. When you take a look at the past couple fights that Gervonta Tank Davis has had, the win over Leo Santa Cruz, like I said, I give him a lot of credit for. Now, Leo Santa Cruz, he didn't really have the power, all in all, to, really bother Gervonta Tank Davis. but he did have decent skills. So that pretty much was like the, that pretty much was like a Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders type of fight, if you even want to compare it to that. Because personally, in my opinion, Billy Joe Saunders was a bigger threat to Canelo probably than what Leo Santa Cruz was to Gervonta Tank Davis. And I know a certain amount of people are going to say, oh, well, how can you say that? Well, the reason why I say that is because Billy Joe Saunders at least has very, very quick feet. And Canelo has shown to have a little bit of problems with that in the past. And Billy Joe Saunders has at least somewhat of a decent resume. Leo Santa Cruz doesn't have the worst resume either. He does have a win over a former top 10 pound-for-pound fighter, probably in Carl Frampton. But that was after coming off of a loss to Carl Frampton. So Leo Santa Cruz, if you want to say, he was not an unbeaten champion. In fact, at the time, I don't even think he had any one of the official belts. So Gervonta Tank Davis, after a while, he is going to have to get in the ring with some of these elite fighters. And right now, when it comes down to it, and that's how I know, when Floyd Mayweather Jr., when he's talking on Canelo Alvarez right now, you can tell that he knows that Canelo is going to get a push a little bit later on as being greater than him. And Floyd Mayweather Jr. sees that. That's why all in all, he's talking all this shit about Saul Canelo Alvarez. But yet, you won't say that shit about your boy, Gervonta Tank Davis, who you're heavily, heavily protecting like a mother hen. It just is what it is, because Gervonta Tank Davis, I don't give a shit what anyone says. His last couple of fights were not against A-grade fighters. They were not against A-grade fighters. Canelo Alvarez, when he fought Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith, every single one of those guys had a legitimate belt, and it was a road to unification. Now, if you want to say, all in all, once again, that you believe that Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, and Demetrius Andrade, are more talented, that's your business. In my opinion, all those fighters, they're pretty much somewhere along the same lines, but I don't really care which order that you rank them. But they're pretty much all along the same lines. Whatever it is you want to say, if you're honest and objective, Canelo Alvarez has fought undefeated champions. He fought legitimate, decent, undefeated champions. But you're going to see Mr. Boxing Ego try to protect Gervonta Tank Davis if this Rolly Romero versus Gervonta Tank Davis fight does happen. So it is what it is. So anyways, we're going to be talking in this video what the difference is between a Canelo Alvarez and a Gervonta Tank Davis, and also that of a Mikey Garcia, because Mikey Garcia did a lot of the same bullshit that Gervonta Tank Davis is doing right now. So it is what it is. But anyways, let's get into the video. Let's see what Mr. Ego has to say.
Try to charge me, but I'm not guilty. Jigga Kelly, not guilty. Rolando Rolly Romero says the case is now closed. The case that caused his fight with Gervonta Tank Davis to not happen and forced him to withdraw. We're going to talk about that in this video. Stay tuned. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I am back with some more boxing. I need everybody at home, yes, you too. It is 2022. Throw a like on the video. Takes a few seconds. This is what enables me to push out more content for you at home. So, appreciate you guys. Rolly flipping the bird. Bang! And he just posted this. Let's read it. Rolando Romero, who was scheduled to fight Gervonta Davis, the fight didn't happen because of allegations. Rolly has now broke his silence, and this is what he has to say. After 3.5 months of my name being slandered with false accusations, having to miss out on opportunities, cheated out of my dream and out of a massive amount of wealth, the investigation into the
Well, if your dream all in all is getting your ass whooped against Gervonta Tank Davis, then I guess that's one hell of a dream. Let me say this, because a certain amount of people may disagree with me. At least when Callum Smith was going into the ring with Canelo and Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders, all those fighters at least had a 30% chance. If your opponent does not even really have a 30 or a 20% chance, that, in my opinion, is a complete mismatch. And what Rolly Romero up against Gervonta Tank Davis is, all he has is a puncher's chance. He literally has no other chance. If you've ever seen Rolly Romero fight, or whatever the hell is, however you pronounce his first name, I'm going to say, Raleigh or Rolly, however, I've heard it pronounced differently. But Mr. Romero, if you've ever seen this dude fight, he cannot fight on the elite level. He swings very wildly. He's very, very powerful. But his footwork is horrible at the end of the day when it comes down to his foot movement is horrible. He's extremely hittable. His defense overall is C grade. You can take a look at him in some of his other past fights. The dude is not on the Gervonta Tank Davis level. To be quite honest with you, I'm not quite even sure if he would beat Mario Barrios or Isaac Cruz. So it just is what it is. I mean, people can try to say all this bullshit. Once again, these are the same channels that love to allege that Canelo ain't fighting nobody. But once again, you can take, like I said, the numbers don't lie. At least pay-per-view numbers don't lie. There's a reason why Mr. Ego was protecting Gervonta Tank Davis's numbers, and he was saying, oh, well, why are people so worried about his numbers? Because people try to allege, you try to tear down Canelo and some of these other fighters you don't like on a constant basis. But then when it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis, all of a sudden, he tanks, which he clearly did when it came down to in that last fight, because ain't nobody want to watch that shit. It just is what it is. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's pocket watching. You guys are broke. Why wouldn't you guys want to buy the fight? It was a good event. Yeah, but it wasn't supposed to be a good event. Like I said, it would be like Canelo if he went to fight David Lemieux right now, and basically that fight was competitive. So, like I said, if Canelo went and fought David Lemieux, I mean, he still would probably do more pay-per-view numbers because Canelo is going to attract a certain amount of attention wherever he goes. But like I said, there's a reason why Gervonta Tank Davis's numbers tanked this fight, and they did a little bit better in the last fight. I don't even think the Mario Barrios fight was an elite fight because I never thought Mario Barrios was an A-grade fighter. But even that fight was better all in all than the last one.
Allegations made against me.
And it's especially better than, the Rolly Romero fight. Rolly Romero has no chance against any elite fighter. None. None whatsoever. Rolly Romero would not even last 6 rounds with Teofimo Lopez. I don't even know if he would last 6 rounds with Ryan Garcia. And Ryan Garcia, if you've heard my opinion about him lately, super athletically gifted, but I don't know if I'd put him quite on the A level quite as of yet. I think that he needs some time. I don't even think Rolly Romero would beat Ryan Garcia. I'm not even quite sure if he would beat Isaac Pitbull Cruz.
Been closed. Charges were not filed because the allegations could not be substantiated because, as I always stated, I am innocent. I am now the symbol of freedom, purity, and love, known as the quote, the boxer formerly known as Rolly. Now you hating MFers can suck my fat black leak. So he's saying the case has come to a dead end, a halt, and it didn't go to trial, and he's basically been acquitted before, it got any more serious, which is great news for Rolly. Rolly always maintained his innocence, and, we'll see what's next for him. Now, I will say this. With this into consideration, I could definitely see Gervonta Davis versus Rolly potentially happening this year. Now, there's no confirmation of that, but if a man was charged with heinous crimes and he went through whatever, I can't even say the judicial system, but whatever police investigation or, whatever due process is available to him and it didn't go anywhere, then he should be able to re-up and basically get that opportunity. And I know old media, I know the haters.
The haters. The haters. But you're not apparently you're not hating on Canelo. This dude is so stupid sometimes with some of his points. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I respect his channel all in all, more than Dante's Boxing Nation or Aki TV. But come on, dude, it's very clear that you're protecting Gervonta Tank Davis here. If you're gonna bitch and moan and complain about how Canelo's not facing David Benavidez, all sort of bullshit, and even you admitted that the last fight against Caleb Plant was a very, very good fight. You thought that Caleb Plant had a decent chance. So what does that mean? That means that even when these boys are trying to allege that Gervonta Tank Davis is facing way better competition, they don't believe that shit. How can you be facing better competition than someone like a Canelo? Canelo just completely unified a division against undefeated champions, fighters that at least have a decent, win in their career. I'm not saying that, they 100% beat future Hall of Famers, but when you take a look at Caleb Plant, he had a very, very good win over Jose Uzcategui, who beat one of the Durrell brothers, who, I never thought either Durrell brother was super duper elite, but it at least is a decent win. He stopped one of the Durrell brothers. Caleb Plant was able to embarrass Jose Uzcategui at least 8 rounds to 4. Billy Joe Saunders was able to get a win over former champion David Lemieux. He was able to beat Chris Eubank Jr. He also was able to get the win over former champion Andy Lee. So Billy Joe Saunders was a legitimate, champion as well. And then you have Callum Smith, who, from what I heard, didn't look impressive in the Ryder fight. I personally never watched it, so I can't tell you. But, I know that Callum Smith, he knocked out George Groves not too long before, and, Rocky Fielding, who, is okay, but not great, but at least he had those couple of wins. Who who the fuck is Rolly Romero facing, man? Like, these guys are legitimately trying to act like Gervonta Tank Davis is actually legitly facing great competition compared to some of these other fighters. Like, dude, what are you talking about? None of these guys have ever even been legitimate champions. Isaac Cruz, Rolly Romero, Mario Barrios, none of these guys have ever even had one of these legitimate belts. I mean, at least I guess Mario had one of the regular belts. I don't really count that as a real champion, but I mean, whatever. If you want to allege that, then whatever. But come on, man. It's like, at the end of the day, Gervonta Tank Davis, extraordinary fighter, extremely talented fighter. But come on, man. It's like, you got to start facing the big boys soon. I mean, if you don't want to go after Vasily Lomachenko, even if you don't want to go after anyone at 135, like, come on, man, there's so many other contenders that you could potentially face. I mean, you talk shit about facing Josh Taylor a couple years ago. Where's that same energy? How come you're not calling out Josh Taylor at the current moment in time? Why fight Jose Ramirez, fight Regis Prograis. Regis Prograis would be an excellent fight. I mean, one of those fights is like, come on, man.
You're gonna say that.
But, like I said, these are the same boys that allege that Canelo, all in all, is avoiding, or that other fighters that they don't like that they're avoiding, but they protect, Tank. Why is that? Because, once again, he's one of their main assets. When it comes to these channels, they have three main assets: Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., Gervonta Tank Davis. But depending on the channel, depending on whether they like PBC, a lot more, which most of them do, because it's owned by Al Heyman, and I understand it to a degree. But in terms of Boxing Ego, he prefers Errol Spence over Terrence Bud Crawford. In terms of Dante's Boxing Nation and Key TV, they prefer Terrence Crawford over Errol Spence. So it depends on the channel, but every single one of these channels are defending Gervonta Tank Davis. They're protecting him. And the reason why that is because if they're going to allege that Canelo Alvarez is avoiding certain fights, they also have to try to, they can't allege that Gervonta Tank Davis is, avoiding, because that's their only excuse to why Canelo is allegedly not the number one pound-for-pound fighter. Like, come on, man.
Oh, nobody wants to see the fight, and
No, nobody does want to see him face Rolly Romero. Once again, is this not the same person that bitches and complains that Canelo is allegedly avoiding all the top contenders? Is this not the same dude? Like, come on. And you're perfectly okay with the Gervonta Tank Davis versus Rolly Romero. Who the fuck is Rolly Romero? Rolly ain't fighting anyone. And on top of that, Rolly, once again, he's not even shit. Rolly Romero is the Rocky Fielding. He's like, that's what he is. That's basically exactly what that fight would be. Rolly Romero is a C grade fighter. He ain't even a B grade fighter.
But you notice, especially when it comes to Gervonta Davis and certain fighters, it's always a complaint. You're not going to please people with old media.
You say the same shit with Canelo Alvarez. Why is it not why apparently is Canelo avoiding all these guys when he's facing, once again, legitimate undefeated champions? But Gervonta Tank Davis, he faces this dude that he's like, okay, so let's talk about his last couple of opponents. Mario Barrios never won an official belt in his career. Isaac Cruz never won an official belt in his career. And if he faces Rolly Romero next, never won an official belt in his career. It's like, come on, man. Like, are you kidding me? And once again, I'm not talking about one of those bullshit regular championship titles. Those are not real titles. Araceli Lara right now, I believe, has, the, what the hell is it? He has one of the regular middleweight titles. And Lara's one of my favorite fighters. I would not call Lara a champion right now, not a legitimate champion. Does anyone take a look at Araceli Lara at the middleweight division and say, oh man, Araceli Lara, he's one of the major champions there? No one says that. Like, come on, man.
Because they're unpleasable, right? When Rolly was...
No, listen, are there going to be some people that bitch and complain no matter who Gervonta Tank Davis faces? Yes, because once again, people can tell that Gervonta Tank Davis is on a high level, but that's why a lot of people are bitching also in the first place. Because it's like, come on, dude. Listen, once again, Gervonta Tank Davis, extraordinary talent, extraordinary fighter. I do believe that personally, he will eventually end up, at least debatably, within that top 5 pound for pound. But it's like, come on, man. We all know that you're on a very, very high level. But it's time to face up and step some of the big boys. I mean, you're not even facing guys that, are A- level, fighters. At least Canelo, when it comes down to, if you want to bitch and moan and say he's not facing Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, Demetrius Andrade, I would get it. But at least he's facing guys that, in my opinion, are somewhat on their level. I mean, Javante Tank Davis, who the hell is he facing? He's not facing anyone. He's not beating anyone, that's high class.
The initial opponent, they complained when Rolly got the boot, and then they had to find a late replacement, and then it was Isaac Pitbull Cruz. Then they complained. Now that Rolly probably
Right, but dude, come on. Isaac Pitbull Cruz is he's not someone all in all that's an A-grade fighter. Who has Isaac Pitbull Cruz ever beat? Now, don't get me wrong. I think that Isaac Pitbull Cruz, I think that he's a good fight for the lower level fighters. I think that he's a good fight, for Rolly Romero or, Ryan Garcia. But no one takes a look at Javante Tank Davis and Isaac Cruz as a great fight. That's why those pay-per-view numbers tanked. This is why I say, you can allege all this bullshit that you want to, because these guys, they always try to tear down certain fighters that they don't like once again. And what do they always say about Canelo? Oh, Canelo, he's not the face of boxing. Yes, he is. You can tell that he is. Because when he fought, and he's not facing A-grade competition, then why did his last pay-per-view against Caleb Plant do almost 1 million buys? Why did it do 900,000 pay-per-view buys? You don't do 900,000 pay-per-view buys if you're just facing bums off the street, or if you're facing cab drivers. There's a reason why Javante Tank Davis, even though he has star power, why his last pay-per-view numbers tanked, and why Boxing Eagle, he wants to protect, Tank, and now he doesn't want to talk about his pay-per-view numbers. So come on. We know what time it is.
will come back into the mix of things, because like there was never, to my knowledge, any formal announcement saying Rolando Romero was no longer the mandatory, right? And if he has all these charges being leveraged against him, and then he comes out on the winning side of that, then it's only right, if they weren't able to find anything, or the person dropped their case, or whatever the situation is, it's only right that it's business as usual, and you know you maintain your rankings. I could understand if he got convicted and sentenced to prison, or something like that. Then you decide if you keep him in the rankings. But according to Rolly, at least, and I don't see why he would make a public statement like that when he hasn't really spoke too much about the situation, if it weren't true. So you got to give him give him his props, and I think he deserves the opportunity. So I think
Well, just because you speak on it publicly doesn't mean that something is true. I mean, look at you and Deontay Wilder. Just, you guys were a legend for the longest time that Deontay Wilder was cheated, and look, you ended up being dead wrong. So it is what it is.
it's an easy fight to make.
But of course, Rolly Romero, when it comes down to it, it does seem like he is innocent. I'm not necessarily debating that, but when it comes down to it, like I said, when you talk about this fight, no one wants to see Javante Tank Davis versus Rolly Romero.
Both guys are with Mayweather Promotions. If you remember, they had a build up, and Tank Davis and him, they were going back and forth. Tank hurt his hand his last fight, had a tough fight. The first guy to not get stopped by Tank in quite a while. There's only one other person that could say that they went the distance with Tank. Rolly, you can see in this picture, he's bigger than Tank, a little bit bigger than Tank. He's a big puncher. And
Yeah, but what does that really mean? I mean, Rolly's a big puncher, but he can't do anything with it. He's like shit. You know who I compare him to almost? He's almost like a worse version of Deontay Wilder. I mean, shit. It doesn't matter if he's a little bit bigger than Tank in terms of height. We all know that Javante Tank Davis can handle overall people who are a little bit bigger than him, because he's supposed to be one of the top fighters in the world. That doesn't really matter. Rolly Romero, sure, he's a little bit taller. Javante Tank Davis is a person that has a big boy stature. He can fit even at 140 pounds and have no problem. So it it just is what it is. Rolly Romero is no challenge for Javante Tank Davis whatsoever, for those of us that know what we're looking at. So it's like, come on, man.
he just beat
He's already trying to build up this fight like it's some hot shit. This is not a good fight. This is a horrible, horrible matchup. It just is what it is.
his charges, or beat his case, or be prevented it from going to an actual case. So I wouldn't be surprised if this fight is made. I mean, actually, to be honest, I'll say it like this: I don't see why this fight won't be made. You know what I mean? Because
I don't really see why it won't be made either, because Javante Tank Davis and Floyd Mayweather Jr., they're very obviously not interested in getting Mr. Javante Tank Davis in there with any of the A-grade fighters. Once again, it just is what it is. And I like Tank. Once again, Tank is a very extraordinary talent. I think that there's a very good possibility that he beats anyone within those weight divisions, but it's like, come on, man. Like, are you kidding me? It's like Rolly Romero. No one gives a shit if you fight Rolly Romero. And I bet you money overall if it's on pay per view, it may do maybe a little bit better than Isaac Cruz just because Rolly Romero, he talks a lot when it comes down to, he's going to hype up the fight. But that fight's not going to do like 500,000 pay per views. It's not even going to do as good as the Mario Barrios fight. There's a reason once again why his numbers were so low last time because ain't nobody want to watch that shit. Unless you're a super fan of Gervonta Tank Davis, you don't want to watch these fights. No one thought that Isaac Cruz had a legitimate chance, and no one, Rolly Romero has even less of a chance. No one wants to see that fight, man.
Understand the spot was hot, the black was hot, the black was hot, the black was hot. So I can understand why they didn't want to initially go forward with the fight because we live in a cancel culture, PC society. So people would have protested because the fight was supposed to be on pay per view. So Rolly had to take care of this issue like he did.
You're a part of that cancel culture, at least with the things that you want to cancel, which is why on a daily basis you try to cancel Canelo Alvarez or Vasily Lomachenko. But once again, there goes there goes the PBFL.
And see it through before they were going to probably make that come into fruition because it would be a hard sell if somebody got these charges and if it looked like at any point Mayweather Promotions, Showtime, which is under the CBS umbrella, weren't taking these allegations serious in the times we live in. So they had to go through whatever they had to go through in order to, come out on the other side. So with that being said, now that it's a done deal and Rolly's saying the case is closed, easy fight to make. Boom. And it's a good fight.
No, it's not a good fight at all. It's not really good. It's not a good matchup. It's not a good fight. A good fight for Gervonta Tank Davis next, in my opinion, would be. I mean, I've heard through the grapevine that Gary Russell Jr. could potentially be an option. That would even that's what a good fight is because I don't think Gary Russell Jr. I don't think that he has any more than a 30% against Gervonta Tank Davis. Like I said, a matchup in my opinion has to at least be 70-30. If it's any lower than that, it's because either A, the opponent, has pretty much beat all the contenders and, the fighter, all in all, it's just not on the same level. So pretty much like when Roy Jones was defeating people, or maybe when Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, yada, 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 or Canelo. But once again, if you're in the prime of your career and there's undefeated champions around you, I mean, if you're facing a decent competitor, it should at least be someone along the lines of 70-30. This Rolly Romero dude, he don't even have a 20% chance against Gervonta Tank Davis. That's like a 90-10 fight. Shit, it may be 95-5. Once again, what does Rolly Romero have over Gervonta Tank Davis? There's no appeal in that fight besides, Rolly Romero. People are going to want to see him get shut up because, once again, he talks a lot. He yaps that mouth of his. But when it comes down to it, like I said, besides that, what does Rolly Romero actually have to threaten Gervonta Tank Davis? Yes, he has very, very good power. But what the hell does it matter for if you have no feet? You have no defense when it comes down to it. And I'm not a person all in all that just alleges that, all these matchups are just garbage. I've never been a person like that. If I think that it's a very decent matchup, I tell people. Just like, when I did my videos last year, I thought that the Mario Barrios versus Gervonta Tank Davis fight, I didn't think it was an A-grade fight, but I at least thought that it was a decent fight. Now, that was a 70-30 fight, so I didn't have a problem with that fight necessarily happening. But this fight, man, it's like, come on. who are you trying to fool? It's a good fight. No, it's not a good fight. Like, come on, man.
Both guys have enormous punching power. Like I mentioned, Tank just fought somebody late replacement who was able to survive.
Like, you know what this fight actually reminds me of? For those of you overall that, go back that far, for those of you that remember Evander Holyfield, you guys remember when Evander Holyfield fought this one strong contender named Burt Cooper? That's basically what this fight reminds me of. Now, Burt Cooper was able to give Evander Holyfield hell, but no one would take a look at Burt Cooper and say, "Wow, he's an all-time great fighter," or he was a legitimate champion. Like no one would ever take a look at him like that. Like that's what this fight is, but even worse.
Rolly's a dangerous puncher. Tank's a dangerous puncher. They don't like each other. They're with the same imprint. And I could do this all day. This boxing stuff is easy for me. When you're looking at guys like Terrence Crawford, he's always been the odd man out because of his affiliations and who he's signed to, which At the points, he had times
I agree with you. And once again, you see that ego. He's on the Errol Spence train, not the Terrence Bud Crawford. But I agree with you.
where he could have broke away and explored, but he chose not to. Meanwhile, you can't be mad at guys like Rolly, guys like Mayweather Promotion, Gervonta Davis, if they have a storyline, a fight they could sell. One guy's a mandatory unless they somehow removed him from.
Listen, I would agree all in all if this were a fight, in my opinion, that were at least even a B grade fight, but this is not even a B grade fight. Like, come on. This is not a fight that is going to do a lot of sells, in my opinion, or this is a fight that it may do some sells, but it's not going to blow anything out of the water. You know what I mean? It just is what it is. Like I said, these are the same dudes, all in all, that love to criticize Canelo. And go ahead, take a look at Ego's videos. He has been a legend for the past 2 weeks that Canelo don't want smoke with David Benavidez or any of these other guys, or he'll criticize other fighters. But then when it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis facing Rolly Romero, a person who pretty much has a C grade skill set and a person who's ever never been a legitimate champion, that's a fight that makes sense. Like, come on, man.
Being the mentor, which I never heard about, and you make
Once again, it's very obvious that these channels, the PBFL, when it comes down to it, once again, as I'll call them from now on, they're very much protecting when it comes down to it, Gervonta Tank Davis.
an in-house fight that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because imagine if everybody was doing that. Like, if Top Rank was making an in-house fight with Shakur Stevenson and Oscar Valdez, that would be cracking. You know?
Right, but that's not a similar fight at all. That's a fight that is 60-40 at least. I would probably favor Shakur Stevenson, but when it comes down to it, those are two legitimate A grade champions. Really what this fight should be compared to. This is like when Terrence Bud Crawford, like when he fought someone like an Aegis Kavalauskas. Except this may even be a lesser version because I'm not even sure if Rolly Romero's is what Aegis Kavalauskas was. Because Aegis Kavalauskas has better boxing ability than what Rolly Romero has.
So this is still a cracking fight, still an explosive fight, and
I mean, in terms of popularity and pay-per-view sales, it would probably do more, of course, than what a Terrence Bud Crawford versus Aegis Kavalauskas would do, because, of course, Rolly Romero, he's an American. He's a person all in all that, I believe he has Cuban descent, so there's certain Latinos that roll with him. There's also, certain people of the, African-American demographic, of course, that are going to roll with him as well, because I believe that he's also part Afro-Cuban. But when it comes down to it, all in all, like I said, this is, no, this is not really a great fight.
you need. Tank has been on pay-per-view his last couple times, so you have to continue
Yes, and his last pay-per-view overall tanked.
pushing the envelope.
And you didn't want to talk about it because, once again, Tank is a very big asset for you. Because Tank, all in all, once again, you're going to use him to push overall your propaganda.
To continue exciting people. Rolly is the type of charismatic, outspoken person where he's going to say whatever comes to mind and things like that, which is part of the ingredients in this modern era of boxing where people could, you can say whatever you want, but the ability to produce an event and sell a show, that's what generates money. You look at Mayweather McGregor, that wasn't Floyd's toughest fight. I can tell you that right now. Easy work.
The fact overall that you're comparing it to Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Conor McGregor tells me that all in all that this fight ain't shit. It is what it is. Like I said, it may be able to do a little bit of money. Maybe it could even do around 300,000 pay-per-view buys. But like I said, I don't even think it's going to do as much as the Mario Barrios fight, because people intuitively know that Rolly Romero, he's not going to do anything against Gervonta Tank Davis. He can't do anything. What is he going to do? He can hit, but he's not going to be able to hit Gervonta Tank Davis. Gervonta Tank Davis is too good for him. And Gervonta Tank Davis, I mean, he has just as much power, if not probably more power, than Rolly Romero. Like I said, this is pretty much like when Canelo fought Rocky Fielding.
Like I said, I ain't got worried.
Now, some people, of course, are going to come in my comment section and say, oh, what are you talking about? Rocky Fielding was coming off of a knockout loss, and Rolly Romero's an undefeated champion. Listen, dude, I'm not I'm not here to go back and forth with it. Listen, you can tell that Rolly Romero, at the end of the day, he's not a high-grade fighter. He's a C-grade fighter. He has no skills compared to Gervonta Tank Davis whatsoever. None. It was the same thing with Rocky Fielding against Canelo Alvarez. That wasn't a good fight, and this isn't a good fight either. But Canelo, at least usually, will face very, very decent competition. It's time for Gervonta Tank Davis. Like I said, I really like Gervonta. I think that he's an excellent fighter. I have him within my top 10 pound for pound right now. But it's like, come on, dude. It's like after a while, it's like you got to start facing someone.
Conor McGregor, he's a young, hungry lion. Like I said before, I'm gonna beat Conor McGregor in about 7, right? So we know that wasn't Floyd's toughest fight, but it was his second most lucrative fight, just behind Pacquiao.
Yes, because Conor McGregor was one of the top MMA fighters at the time. And I'm not saying all in all that I always like it when MMA fighters transition into it, but I can understand at least Floyd facing Conor McGregor and, Logan Paul because, those are very interesting fights. As Ego just said, lucrative fights that are going to do a lot of money. But come on, man. I mean, like, you're Devonta Tank Davis. You're supposed to be one of the biggest stars in the sports. And if you're facing legitimate boxers, like, come on, you got to face fighters that have a legitimate chance, or at least fighters that are somewhat competitive. And I'm sorry, but Rolly Romero, that dude, is no offense against him, but that dude ain't shit. It just is what it is.
Which was an anomaly
He
of
talks a lot of shit, but like I said, when he finally gets into the ring with a fighter that can handle his ass, shit, Rolly Romero, he wouldn't even be able to beat George Kambosos. George Kambosos would tee his ass up.
fights. So that's not bad. So we know this. We know how this goes. We know how this story goes. It's a fun fight with Rolly and Gervonta. It's a explosive fight.
It's a fun fight if you're looking for a similar fight that's gonna end up like Mike Tyson versus Marvis Frazier. if you think that fight overall is exciting, then yeah, it's exciting for a second round knockout.
Because somebody probably will be knocked out or at best hurt. Rolly just beat his case, so he has that storyline. All this is ingredients that you mix into the gumbo pot.
You know what this fight actually reminds me of? For those of you that watch UFC, this is like when John Jones fought Chael Sonnen. No one thought Chael Sonnen really overall had a legitimate chance, and he pretty much didn't, and he got knocked out, I believe, in the first round. Where Chael Sonnen, he always made fights so interesting because he always talked a lot of shit, but he never could cash the checks overall that he wrote for himself. It just is what it is.
And it sells. So I think as they look for Tank Davis's next opponent and next big event, because Mario Barrios, he already fought him. He's moving up to 47. What other fight is Tank gonna have that's realistic? And of course, people are gonna say, Lomachenko and stuff like that. But I don't see that as super realistic based on multiple things, like the different sides of the street. Lomachenko's gonna want money that he probably can't validate
So that's your excuse overall for the Lomachenko fight not happening. Is that Lomachenko that he's gonna outbid himself?
based on what he's.
So what about the Devin Haney fights? What about the George Kambosos fights? What about any of those fights? The Josh Taylor fights. Go up, fight Josh Taylor, fight Regis Prograde. Like, come on, man.
Sold, things like that. So Ryan Garcia, same thing. It's like Ryan, his expectations, I don't know if they'll be real. Ryan has pulled out of fights, so who does Mayweather Promotions want a chance that they spend the money on post?
So, like I said, this dude is making excuses for every single possible top contender that Gervonta Tank Davis could face. And what is he basically saying? I don't know if it's realistic. Okay, no, I get you. This is what I say. When these guys even try to compare Gervonta Tank Davis to the Canelo Alvarez level, you can't do it. You can never compare Gervonta Tank Davis at this current moment in time to Canelo Alvarez because they're just completely different animals. I think that in terms of talent for their divisions, Gervonta looks like he's up there in terms with anyone, even in terms of Canelo, in terms of talent. But in terms of resume, in terms of the people that he's facing, no, it's not even close.
Stuff like that. And Ryan is coming off a long layoff, so there's a built-in excuse right there. If he were to fight Tank Davis straight away, et cetera, et cetera. So
That's a built-in excuse right there. Okay.
it may be Rolly. I can't say this for a fact. I don't.
So basically, what you're saying is that if Gervonta Tank Davis, if he beat Ryan Garcia, that it should be counted as a legitimate win, but people would make excuses. But once again, this is the same dude that always alleges that Canelo Alvarez fights people off their worst performances. Just like Dante's Boxing Nation, that idiot in Aki TV.
Know what is being planned, but I would definitely put Rolly in the top list as candidates to possibly fight Gervonta
Well, shit, who else is it going to be? It certainly isn't going to be any A-grade fighters. Unless we're talking about Gary Russell Jr.
in 2022. Let me know how I did in this video. Subscribe to the channel. Congrats to Rolly, beat his case. And I'm out. The future.
Anyways, that's really overall about it for this video, but I just thought that I would review that because, like I said, these channels all know, like I said, they try to spoon feed you this bullshit about how certain champions, certain champions that they may not like, especially how they're slithering in and out of the weight divisions and facing the clear weakest competition. Bullshit. Once again, there's a difference between a Saul Canelo Alvarez and what a Gervonta Tank Davis is or what a Mikey Garcia is. What Gervonta Tank Davis is doing right now is the same exact thing what Mikey Garcia was doing throughout his whole entire career. Because all you have to do when someone has a certain amount of fights, take a look overall at the names. And you can take a look overall and see, wow, this dude actually has some decent names on his resume. But when you have certain fighters like a Gervonta Tank Davis and, what's his name, Mikey Garcia, like, once again, take a look at Mikey Garcia. No one ever criticizes Mikey Garcia because Mikey Garcia was never the number one pound-for-pound fighter, so he was never a main threat. But if Mikey Garcia was ever debated as the number one pound-for-pound, they would have tore him down just as much as they do Canelo Alvarez. But the reason why they tear down Canelo is because they know he's on the highest level. But it is what it is. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video, and I have very high expectations of Gervonta Tank Davis. I think one day, especially if he does beat the top contenders, he certainly can debatably be within my top 5 pound-for-pound. He even may one day make it to my number one pound-for-pound spot. But it's time to get into the ring with those A-grade fighters. It's getting to the point now to where you're nearing 30 fights when it comes down to it, and you're facing guys that are legitimately, that are guys that have never even won belts before. So it's like, come on, man. But it is what it is. So that is the difference between a Saul Canelo Alvarez and a Gervonta Tank Davis, or a Mikey Garcia and a Saul Canelo Alvarez. So it is what it is. Anyways, that's really about it for the video today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.